Hi, my name is Mike Fox, and I'm a millennial not even close to retiring, listening to a podcast about retirement.
Welcome to the Redirect Podcast, where we explore what comes after career. Real conversations about transitioning from the 9-to-5 grind to your next great adventure. Whether you're heading into retirement or simply redefining what purpose means, we're here to inspire, inform, and help you reimagine what's next. This isn't the end of the road. It's the start of something new. Hey, Adam, Dale, another beautiful day here on the Redirect Podcast. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Really ready to rock today.
Ready to roll. Yeah, this is exciting stuff. We're into our rhythm, and here we go again. So fired up.
We hear from so many people that apparently other people have been latching on to some of the things that we've discussed, as well as guests that we've had come on into the studio. So it's just sort of cool to watch how this is materializing. One thing I want to throw on out is that even though we're focused on, finding your purpose in retirement, so we're going after an older demographic, but of late we've been getting some comments, hey, what about the young guys? And we're like, oh, so we want to hear from you about what your parents are going through. And they're like, well, that's a part of it, but also what I'm going through. And I'm like, okay, well, it's redirect, right? And I'm like, wow, that's a big thing. So I have a question for you guys. I have kids that are millennials. I think all of us have kids that are millennials.
Yeah.
That's
that's correct. Just realized all of a sudden right here live in the broadcast. Oh, crap. I do have a couple of those.
That's right. And they're listening to you, so recognize them.
So with that being the case about listening, I'm curious, have you had conversations within your families, your kids, about what we're doing, what we're saying, what they're getting out of it? Adam, any comments from you?
So not so much from my kids, but I do have some friends, some very close friends in my orbit that are well outside of our target demographics. They're younger than myself, and I am all in all too young for this group myself, but here I am. So those younger friends, interestingly enough, they've listened because they like me, which is great. And they have said the same thing. Whoa, hold on. I thought this was about retirement. They have said, man, I'm finding those moments, just looking back at life and think it's something changed in my life. And it was an opportunity to take a different step, take a different course. And I could just let something come to an end, or I could choose a new beginning. And that's what they did. And they're realizing they have had redirections in their life that now they've caught inspiration. Like, hey, if I should come to this moment again, that I can, with purpose, with intentionality, find a new way forward. And not exclusive to retirement, the idea of purposeful redirection is really resonating with people outside of our target demographics.
Yeah. In my world, my two older boys, I asked the question to them. I'm like, okay, how many podcasts have you listened to? One son says, yeah, I'm listening to it to support you, and I've listened to every one. Okay, so tell me about it. And he says, what it's doing is creating awareness, and it's creating an opportunity for me to sort of understand that this time is going to come, and it may not necessarily come in retirement, and that to be aware of things and how life happens. I was sort of moved by that comment from him to say that he is aware of what we're talking about, and he's pulling things from it that he can relate in his world, as well as store in the backpack. So if something happens down the road, so it's sort of exciting to hear that there are younger people grabbing pieces of our conversation out there that they're listening to. Dale, what about you?
I actually went to a conference a week or so ago down in Austin, Texas, and it was with a largely young crowd. And I still had an opportunity to, hey, what are you doing? And I kind of mentioned the podcast. I can count 5 or 6 situations where somebody who is much younger, 30s, were saying, my mom or my dad is struggling. I would love to tell them or give them something that would help them through this. I go way back, though, to Christmas when I was back in Chicago, and in a conversation with a woman who, she's a psychologist in Chicago, And she said, you know what? This sounds a lot like identity. This sounds like, in my focus is identity. And of course, my first comment is, when can I get you on the show? Second comment was, tell me more about that. And she just started talking about a lot of the people I deal with are going through situations where all of a sudden it's just them and they need to really go through a process, and I help them through a process. But for me, it just opened up this funnel that said, this happens throughout your life. I mean, every time you're kind of dissected or disengaged from the job that you are doing, who are you and what are your talents and what do you bring forward? And I've always been one that looked at people and said, look, if you get fired, you go find a new job for more money. And people are like, oh, yeah, maybe. Okay, yeah. And every time it works that way. But it's that little bit of, it's you. It's you. It's not the job. It's you. So welcome. We're so glad to have Mike's today's friend of the Redirect podcast. After graduating from Indiana University with a Bachelor of Science degree in public finance in 2008, Mike joined the Woosley Industrial Group, which provides supply chain management solutions, where he served as a buyer for 6 years and a training coordinator for 3. In 2017, Mike began his master's degree in professional studies at Georgetown University, graduating in 2018 with a skill set in writing, which I've been able to experience myself, public relations, and corporate communications. Mike joined Hyperquake, an independent strategy and design agency, in 2019, where he is currently serving as the director of brand strategy. Mike is a writer and a communications strategist, helping Hyperquake in building brands and creating immersive brand experiences. So, Mike, welcome to the Redirect podcast. We're so happy to have you, and I'm super excited about having this conversation because it moved me greatly when I first heard it. But tell me, so why don't you start off by just kind of maybe go back and experience that moment again when you read it and what your reaction was.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me. I'm honored to be here. So I think listening to the first few episodes, obviously I was feeling a sense of commonality and sort of understanding, people are really grappling with what's next. And I, like your kids, was very similar in the sense of I'm first listening through the lens of my parents. I idolize them. I worship them. I think they've sacrificed everything for my siblings and myself. And so when they start to communicate some of the things of the struggle of maybe not having sort of the answers to what's next, you feel that as a son, especially with my father, who talks to me about it a little bit more in depth. It really resonated with me in terms of, I think he was sort of looking for the next thing and starts to sort of pick up on maybe why it wasn't the same as the thing that came before it. I always sat with that, and I empathized with it. But I didn't quite understand it until I had my experience where I was starting to notice what happens when life doesn't just hand you the next thing you're supposed to do. So as you get older, obviously you're kind of in the scaffolding of life. So you're sort of, hey, I go through school, and then I'm fortunate enough that I will always be thinking about, where am I going to college? Okay, well, I got to go get a big boy job. I should major in something where it's kind of universal. I could go into anything, really. And so I'll do the language of business, finance, right? I never stopped and asked myself, is this who I am? And that's how you read my intro. I was not a happy person in the first part of my career. That wasn't me. I was just doing the thing I thought I was supposed to do. Then you start experiencing other things through life of like, okay, now I got to go find, I want to be married. I want to have a family. When you're younger, you're put in more situations to find love, Right. And then that sort of starts fading because things change in the world where you're not in this concentrated zone called college where like kind of everyone's figuring it out. That's where I'm starting to see the scaffolding fall away. And as you do that, it's sort of like losing a map, and it's like, well, where the hell do I go? That is where I sort of first stared down. I've really got to spend time with who I am. And fortunately, I have people who know who I am. They were better at articulating or even understanding what I was good at. Fortunately, I have my sister who we have a lot in common, and she's also a hero of mine. She's my older sister. She introduced an opportunity to move to D.C. She said, I think this program is for you. And sure enough, I quit my job. I immediately feel happier, but terrified. I'm basically starting over. I mean, really.
About how old were you?
I was 30 at the time.
Nice.
Yeah. So
How old are you now?
I'm 38.
38.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? Adam, you're no longer the younger guy in the room.
Yeah, but I will be on the next episode, so it's fine.
And Mike, do you see him as being old at 54? Say yes. Come on.
I don't want to do that.
Sorry to distract, but
I think Dale's the youngest person I know, so youngest
certainly in maturity.
there's a corporate answer for you.
So you're in DC.
Yeah, so you're in DC now at age 30.
Yeah.
Into a program that is real, as your sister said, was something that is really you.
Yeah, I could sense it in the application process. They asked me, like, what are you doing? Most people go into this program in their early 20s, and they also have a background that says something that they should be here. And I wrote this essay, and I wrote the hell out of it. I knew that was my ticket. It was like, there's nothing on my resume that's going to convince them that I should be here. And so I put
just the power of persuasion at that point via the essay.
Yeah, I think I put my heart and soul into it. I had phrases that were like, this is not just like a vocational approach. At that point, I was like, well, we're going all in. And I was moving too. So I was, giving up everything I knew in Cincinnati. I moved there. I was supported by my brother-in-law and my sister endlessly, too much. Because there were still parts of my life that I was running from. And we can get to that. But I went into the program, and I mean, from the first moment, I was like, I'm for the first time in my life, I was like, I'm really good at this. I just really resonated with the material. You're older, so you don't feel like a 19-year-old kid studying, but everything just sunk in. I was just like really kind of absorbing everything and just being, I got this. And I had professors from some of the larger PR firms in the city who teach these classes, and they would give me the affirmation I had never received before, which was like, hey, you got a gift for language. You've got a good eye for the positioning of what we're trying to do with a message or things like that. And so it really felt good to just suddenly be like, oh, this is what talent feels like a little bit. I had never experienced that. I think that was part of why I stayed stuck for so long, was I just felt like I didn't deserve anything, and I wasn't worthy of having sort of a career that got me excited getting out of bed in the morning.
So let me ask you this. Have you found many people your age and or younger who have found themselves in a similar identity crisis, if I can call it that, where you're just kind of wondering, wow, I don't know why I chose what I chose. I don't know how I ended up there. The scaffolding of identity that propped up by all of these external factors like accolades or pressure to do what I'm supposed to be doing in the eyes of others, all of these different things, external factors. Once all of that falls away, because as of time, it just happens, right? Exposes you for just you. You got to stand on your own. All of that goes away. Have you found many people who had struggled with a similar identity crisis that they could articulate and share with you?
I'd say I'm going to sound like an armchair psychologist a little bit. The friends that I have that are a little bit more introspective, they share more of that. But yeah, I think it's something that as you get older, you're right, you start maybe taking notes on it a little bit more.
You said that you were following sort of expectations of others, and I think there's a lot of people that have done that. But you found at one point where you had that light bulb go up to say, what am I doing? I'm curious as to what was that tipping point that did that, question number one. And then you also made a comment that you didn't see things in yourself and it was your sister. You know, what's important here is, I think, is having people that you can confide in to help you. But I'm sure there's lots of people out there, regardless of your age, there's something inside of them that says, is this really who I am? A, can they stop? And B, how do you find those people that inspired you to say, okay, I'm going to get on this ride now?
Knowing the ride was over on the first thing was understood through just burnout, hitting a wall. There were days where I just wasn't getting out of bed. I just knew something had to give, something had to change. So that is when my sister called me. And you're right, people who love you will see your struggle maybe better than you can see it yourself. She was still that scaffolding, I guess. She still said, I think this is a way out and a way into something. I don't think that was a Freudian slip. I think I did see it as a way out first. And when I got there and went through the program, I started to feel it as a way in. And that lends itself to, I have to confront the fact that I was there still struggling mentally, and then I needed help. And so I've diagnosed like depressive, had major depression, and from therapy and understanding that, I've dealt with that most of my life, but I had not known it until I got to DC. I'm in a fortunate position where I had help, and I mentioned this on the background, but 100% of people should be in therapy. It sucks.
This is therapy for me, I'll be honest
No,
with you.
no kidding. Yeah. It sucks that it's a luxury good. It's not so much supported as well as it should be by systems, but I still think it's really important because it makes you sit in the thing as opposed to chase or pursue or use somebody else's answers. Yeah, I think really dealing with that made me think even harder about where I was and what I was doing. I think that's where I started to feel like where you feel like you're doing the right thing for yourself.
I think this would be a good time to take a quick break. If you're enjoying our show, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to comment. And if you like what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only makes our day, but helps other listeners discover our content. Your support through listening, sharing, following, and reviewing means the world to us and helps our podcast grow. Thanks so much for being part of the Redirect family. So let's now get back to our conversation. You inspired me by something you just said, and I think this is something that everybody who's considering change or redirection, you wrote the hell out of who you were. You said that. I think it would be a fantastic exercise if we and our listeners took a couple hours and wrote, who are you? Sell yourself. You had to do this because they were looking at a blank slate of why is this person here? I think that's a great exercise.
And it's not just a bullet list on things that we've accomplished. It's what's the engine that's behind it. What are all the things that work inside of us in order to make us do what we've done?
Well, I think to support Mike's idea of everybody ought to be in therapy, I think being able to articulate how you feel, to understand those emotions, to understand what value or impact that they have, and then what to do with those emotions. The idea of sitting in something is cool. Not a common that's not a common thought process. And there is, especially in like sorrow and pain, you experience those things for a reason. It's not just to keep your hand off the hot stove. It's not just to keep your heart out of bad situations. It is to shape you and mold you, and you gotta process that stuff appropriately. And I don't think everybody knows how to do that. We're full of distractions. We're full of things to take us out of the pain, not help us process that stuff well and come out healthier on the backside of it to get yourself ready for the rest of it. So, Dale, I do agree with you. The best version of us forward is to be able to write that stuff out and plan like, hey, who am I? All of the stuff we've been talking about in the podcast. But I don't think everybody knows how to articulate their emotions, has a fair understanding of what those emotions are, let alone how to deal with those things. So I, too, agree with you, Mike, that therapy's for everybody. I also agree with your sentiment that it's a shame that it's a luxury item, because I don't think that the younger generation is headed for easier times in that. And that's I think, I don't want to call it a coming crisis because that's probably an overstatement, but there is definitely a void in professional help and funding of it. It's going to have to fold into insurance. There's no way we as a culture go forward without professional help being funded.
Absolutely agree. I think even going back to also the sentiment of journaling, not to jump around too much, but that's one of the things you do. I was still chasing things, and I found purpose through my job, and I sunk everything into that. And so that gave me the thing to just keep pursuing. while all these other parts of my life weren't really going that well. I wasn't being that good of a friend. I wasn't having that many relationships. I wanted to have kids by now, and I don't. So that stuff sort of was weighing on me, but I was like, you know what? Full steam ahead at work. I love it. And eventually I hit a burnout with that. I still have not sat in the feelings, as you guys were saying. And like, I did take leave from work. It was pretty bad. And I had to go into a recovery program. And that is where I learned a lot of the stuff that I honestly resonated with this podcast the most about is, hey, we noticed now you're trying to be really good at recovering. You're trying to be the A student at recovering. That means you're being an inauthentic version. You're just chasing. You're just trying to get rid of this or whatever. And then they were like, have you ever sat in what you're feeling? And I don't mean just the pain and the sadness and the depression. I mean the boredom. Realizing boredom is not a state. It's an emotion.
Wow.
Most people can resonate with boredom, right? I think humans just do a good job of being like, well, I'm bored. Let's go do something next. But like, how do you do that on a real level where you're talking about major things in life, like retirement or recovering from a mental illness or this job is not the right job? That's really hard. And I want to say to everyone, it is really hard work, but it starts with pretty unremarkable steps. The unremarkable journal entry. You just open the thing and you take a pen and you just start writing. And you're like, well, I didn't know that about myself 5 minutes ago. And I'm going to go see if this thing really has weight. And that's sitting in it. That's sort of investigating what you're feeling. Just sitting alone with your thoughts is enough. Even if you start getting distracted, but you're still focused on just thinking, you're good.
I think there's a generational thing here. I'm going to be that guy. All right. I'm the boomer. And my feeling is when I have those types of situations, I get out and do something.
Mm-hmm.
While I'm doing something, I'm processing. But I don't necessarily sit in the space and just bathe in it. This is only Curt Brewer. This is me. Is that creates darkness, even more darkness, because then I'm not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's a generational thing, because I've heard what you're saying. I've heard it from a lot of other younger people. And you made a comment in here as well. Most of my life, I did not have a cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
In everybody's life today, we all have cell phones. The world is sitting in your hand.
Mike, can I speak to that? So a lot of folks, let's call it on the older side of things, will look at it like that. And I think that's very natural and understandable because your generation and my generation as well, I remember life before cell phones. I think it's fair to suggest that that has had a deep psychological impact, but it's not going away. And regardless if that's the catalyst or a note and a concerto of a different way of life that millennials and younger face, it's a reality. It's not going to resonate with people to suggest that most of your challenges will just go away if you put your cell phone down. While there could be some truth to that, they're not going to do it. And so since it's not going away, then the only thing to do is to create the healthiest response. And I think, actually, contrary to popular opinion, I think they will come out healthier than we ever were. I can tell you already that my 32-year-old son has a better perspective of mental health and productivity and value than I ever did. What say you, Mike?
Completely agree. The technology piece is operating in a bell curve in that, you're right, older people are better at putting it down and realizing, like, this doesn't make me feel that good. And then I'd say millennials, because, kind of we knew pre-having the world in your pocket. But then once it started happening in our youth, it's sort of like, oh, this is the new way, and you don't know the externalities of it yet. I think, Adam, to your point, the externalities are starting to really show themselves.
Oh, yeah. And
I think that's one of the nice things about the embrace of understanding personal well-being is beyond just your health, your physical health. That is, you're right. I think younger people are very attuned to that because they know how much it plagues, not just their generations, but even the older generations, where it's like, you think you guys didn't have to deal with it. You did deal with it, and you just didn't recognize it as well as we do because we have the information and the conversation, really.
Yeah, we suppressed it.
Yeah.
Be suppressed.
Sure.
And, pull the bootstraps up. Get out there and do something about it.
Rub some dirt on it.
Yeah, you're okay. You're not bleeding. Get it back out there and take another hit.
And there's some resilience. There's some resilience that comes from that, which is awesome. But
you're not being true to who you really are.
Yeah.
If you are just putting yourself in front of getting hit in the door with the door all the time.
So. And this is happening for many of us. Boomers is hitting us at 65, 70. It's the first time that we're dealing with what you've dealt with so far. And you're giving us a way to deal with it. I'm one of the guys that ran on most of my life saying, I fear boredom. Why do I fear it? I fear it maybe because I'm going to realize some things I didn't want to deal with. And all of a sudden you go through your career of 35, 40 years, and now you've got time that is now kind of forced on you, and you've chosen to redirect or retire. You now have the time and you're sitting in it. And I kind of love the thought of having to do that. But when you start talking about now, who are you, and dive into that process, you have got the time, forced or not, you're sitting in it, whatever it is.
I think those are both really important points that, I sort of resent the they just don't rub dirt on it and dust themselves off like they used to. I resent that a lot because I think, sit in your negative emotions, deal with your mental health. You will find that there's nothing more terrifying than that it's actually easier to just pretend like it's not there.
Sure.
There's the stigma of it is that it's soft speak, it's soft stuff. And it's, I can tell you, I stared down the barrel of it in a real way. It's not. It's actually the hardest thing I've ever done. And that's sort of even why I was so quick to respond to the podcast and I put it on our work Slack. Like, I didn't care if people saw it because I had a piece of my identity that I gave up. And it was a bad piece of my identity. But because you're uncomfortable by that emptiness, I grieved it. I missed it. I missed the thing that was making me miserable because it was something that filled the void, a distraction, a thing that I could just keep pursuing, not caring that it burned me out and made me miserable, because at least it was something. I didn't have to face the negative emotions and sit in that. And that just snapped me into it of like, this is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, because not only do I not want to get better, but I also want to get better. Like I'm just torn to pieces here. So I started explaining that to my dad, and he goes, holy cow, that sounds a lot like retirement.
Wow.
Wow.
And that's really what brought me here is, again, I mentioned I idolize my dad. I think he's the most brilliant person I've ever known, and I've never thought that because of his job or his accomplishments there. I just thought he was just brilliant and enormously curious, enormously smart, and wanted to know everything about the world, and supported his kids no matter what, and made everything about his kids.
And he worked with one company about his entire career, right?
Yep, all his career, P&G. And then my mom, same deal. I mean, she poured herself into being a mother, and she still in many ways does, and they still keep us safe. And now they've transferred that to their grandchildren. But as you get older, you start seeing your parents as what you are, a kind of a confused, lost person. And you start realizing, man, we're all just kids stacked on each other's shoulders in trench coats. We're all just trying to pretend. And the more conversations, and I tend to have this with my parents, like deeper conversations about the human condition, they start opening up in that way. And you're like, okay, everybody's 8 years old. And just hearing my dad talk about dealing with retirement, and then how he still kept jumping to the next thing. He was retired for, I don't know, months. He's like, I just want to be a beach bum and a granddad, Then he's like, well, now I can go do this consulting gig. And he loved that validation of the outside world being like, you're good at this. This is how we value you. And he did that for a while. And he did that as hard as he did his career. And now he's left that. We start talking more, and he starts mentioning stories of like, these younger people, sometimes they just look right past me. And I've always disagreed with him on that. And I wish he understood that Dad, first of all, you're talking about a clerk at Best Buy. Like, they look past everybody. You know, they look past anybody who's buying anything. Like, nobody's like thrilled to be there. But I sounded, as somebody who's maybe been in too much therapy, it sounds like somebody projecting a story onto their experience that they're not maybe realizing is happening. Is, how do I grapple with this? And I think when he said that sounds like retirement, it just opened up this relationship we have now where we do talk a lot about this stuff. So it's been good. But yeah, that's where the bridge between young and old doesn't matter. We're all sort of experiencing somewhat of a identity crisis.
What I liked in what you said, he felt he is what he did. And that was something that he is maybe grieving that he has lost because he had that worth. And I can understand that. You are saying, Dad, it's not about what you did, and that you're seeing the things inside of him that he doesn't necessarily see because he's still relying on that cultural identity scaffolding that you used earlier. And now you are using that same approach on you at age 38.
In many ways, I'm trying to be to my father what my sister was to me, where she starts saying, like, I think you want to do this, or I think you want to pursue that, while I'm sort of like, sure. I wouldn't say my dad he's not lost or anything like that, right, as I was, but it's hard for people to recognize their identity when it's not pointed to or outlined.
And since you're so observant of what you're seeing your dad is doing, how are you doing it for yourself so that you don't fall into that same path?
Really hard work. And I go back
consistent and ongoing.
Yeah, I go back to, like, as revelatory as you can kind of get to an insight sometimes, all this work is just profoundly unremarkable. And understanding that it's going to always feel like that, which I really also am glad to share that I get out of recovery and I go back to work and you just realize real quick, the world keeps spinning, man. Nobody was counting the days. And frankly, you're in this conversation in the morning about the dilemmas of life. And then in the afternoon, I'm in the office and we're talking about something really trivial. Seeing that dichotomy in real time was very eye-opening in terms of, okay, this is never going to feel like euphoria. It's never going to feel like I have found the promised land. It's just going to be little steps. And I hate to sound so trite, but sort of that baby steps into self-improvement or finding yourself, journaling for 5 minutes, putting your phone down, things like that, where you're just trying to sit with it for a little bits of the day and try to get a little better.
I love the relationship you had with your sister. I love now the relationship you have with your dad. And we're in this together. And one of the big moments I know I experienced as I was continuing to grow up is my dad was a human. My mom was a human. And all of a sudden we start having adult conversations. I grew up with 6 brothers and sisters, so mass pandemonium, as did many in my generation. My question, how did you do it, Mom and Dad? You know, and for them to start talking about, oh, it was hard. It was really hard. You know, all of a sudden I'm starting to relate and say, you know what, that's kind of where life is. You know, I mean, you can't pass those moments of learning, but it's going to be painful. So I didn't want to hear some of that. But I had to hear it because that was just real life. And what did you learn from and having those conversations? But, you know, it is powerful. And I need to continue to reach out to people that know me and be able to seek input as to how do you see me as I'm going through this process.
So, Mike, if you could please give us some insight or even a recommendation for retired folks, since you've had your own really wonderful journey, it sounds like, in finding health, and you've had some visibility into how your dad is weirdly on a similar or was on a similar journey. What advice do you give to people who are retiring or already retired?
So you had John McDaniel on, and he said, you know, hey, the discovery could be the fun part. It should be something you're up for. And I guess maybe even the point of a lot of what we're talking about is be prepared for that feeling. because discovery will hit people differently in terms of what it feels like. We're talking about it sort of sitting in that emptiness and really investigating not what's next, but like, how do I feel right now? And so I'd encourage that with everybody is don't think about sort of even from a tactical standpoint, what's next, but just sort of what am I feeling right now? That's presence. That's sort of the thing of, because I think what happens is you might chase the next thing, even in retirement. Let's say you just keep doing that for, 20 more years. You might look back on that and say, like, none of that felt that fulfilling. So it's sort of preparing for that discovery and understanding that would be my advice, is that's going to be way harder than you think. And I know that's not really prescriptive to an answer, but I think even just recognizing that as you're about to retire, that, hey, this is going to take some work. This is not as the celebration that culture is going to make it feel like, or even just the terror that I'm feeling. It's somewhere, there's more to it. So I think just kind of, really processing that in a way that you really clear the time and understand it's going to happen.
It's being deliberate. You have to be deliberate to stop. That's what I'm sort of getting from what you're saying, is that as opposed to just go to the motion, the next thing to do, the next bucket list, the next service organization that you want to be a part of, it's like, I need to take time and reflect, be deliberate in making that time to stop, and to look at myself internally and to ask some of the questions that we've brought up today. What am I doing? Why am I doing it? As well as being open to conversations with those that are close in your inner circle to say, A, I'm struggling. B, what do you think? And C, how can we work together to sort of help me move forward? And there's, again, I'm not speaking for your dad, but I know I've had these types of conversations with my sons. And there's nothing more rewarding than to be able to sit with the ones that you love and see that they love you, and that you talk to one another, and you're pulling away all the armor, you're pulling away all the stuff, and you're just getting down to the point of the person. And, I applaud you in where you are in your life and what you're doing, and recognizing that there are things out there that have put you in a situation and you're doing something about it. And you're redirecting yourself, not only in career, but you're redirecting yourself as a person. And I thank you for coming here today and sharing very personal things of you. And I'm sure that our listeners are going to get some great value, regardless of your age, on the things that you talked about today, Mike. Thank you so much for being with us.
And I can honestly say, ever since I met you, that I felt a connection. And I mourn the fact that we didn't spend more time together. I mean, you get into what we're doing. Mike and I worked together probably for, 4 years or so. But there was always something very different about you, and it was good, and it was whatever you were going through. I thought you found a part of whatever you were super good at, and that is communication, and that was writing, but that was so much feeling. I mean, I just felt the feeling, and kudos to you. There's parts of me that said, what, I wish when I was 30. I graduated with an accounting degree and the award of person least likely to be an accountant. But I had a plan of, I'm just going to go out there and get a job so I can start seeing the rest of the world and seeing, where do I really fit? I needed to probably take more time to do what you're doing. So congrats on that. I sense there's so much more to this. Speak on behalf of the three of us. You're a friend of Redirect, but we'd probably really like to have you back because there's a lot more to talk about.
There may be younger people out there that are going through the exact same thing that you have been through and are going through, that maybe they just want to talk to somebody that's a peer. Is there a way that someone can get in contact with you, and how could they do that?
Yeah, I welcome this conversation for anybody who's maybe experiencing that. So if anybody is sort of sensing some of this stuff in this conversation, I'm an open book about it. I think you were talking about it as terms of vulnerability with people you love. I think that's important. Everyone do that. But if you are looking for any sort of conversation and specifically about anything that was mentioned today, anyone's happy to reach me at, my email is mikejfox58@gmail.com. I'm going to be profoundly unremarkable, but I've been through some of this. I wish I had done it even earlier. So yeah, if I can help, I'd absolutely love to. I'd also plug that most employers are offering an employee assistance program. They largely sit in onboarding packets that people forget about, including the managers and employers. So I would encourage any young person or anybody, if they're struggling or if they just want someone to talk to, but they don't have the means to do sort of the luxury good of therapy, look into that. It's employer supported. I'm saying this on behalf of understanding some of the statistics behind that because of our work with Scott McGowan, who is actually raising awareness of all these EAP programs that are existing out there for people to use in his company One Morning. He's actually trying to build that bridge for employees to understand all those available resources to them. So,
catch you next time on the Redirect Podcast. Big thanks to the University of Cincinnati's 1819 Innovation Hub for allowing us to use the eSports recording studio to record today's podcast. Catch up on all the Redirect Podcast episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. To begin your Redirect journey, head over to redirect-u.com. Want to connect with the Redirect team? Feel free to email us at info@redirect-u.com. Remember, there's purpose in your life, so find it and go do something about it.